Hi and welcome back to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. Thank you so much for continuing to hang out with me here in my slightly chaotic gemstone wielding studio. I hope you're having a lovely day. Just a quick reminder to say that every other Monday you're very welcome and invited to join me over on my Facebook page, which is Gemhawks and Gems Gembox, for a live show that starts at 8 PM British summertime or Greenwich Mean Time, whatever time of year it is, and that's every other Monday over on Facebook. I'll pop the link in the description below. Today I want to show you how to create your very own prong basket set gemstone pendant. Now, it's really useful to have a design like this in your catalogue of things that you can do as a beginner, because it enables you to set funky shaped gemstones, rough specimens, odd shaped cabochons, and so on and so forth. Now, you may have seen basket set gem designs before, where you have weaving that runs between two parallel lines, and then that smooths all the way around the outside of the gemstone or the cabochon or whatever it is. Sometimes you don't make that quite deep enough, and there's a risk that the gem could escape. So today I'm going to show you a hybrid design which uses both some of the prongs that we've looked at in former videos, which I'll link at the end of this video, and it also carries the technique of basket weaving, a nice open weave which allows the gemstone to shine out from all angles. So I'm just going to show you something of an example on the board now. So this is one that has been very, very simply set, and you can see that around the edges you have got the basket weave setting. Now this is quite a narrow piece of beautiful snow quartz, very common but very beautiful gemstone. And this is a rough sliver that has been lightly polished. What you'll see is that this is quite narrow, and there would be the possibility for this to just pop out of a traditional basket setting. So I've added a few prongs at the bottom and a couple of little loops at the top, and I'm going to show you how to create a design much like this with another piece of this gorgeous snow quartz that I've got hanging around. That's actually going out on this Monday's Facebook Live as a free gift to anybody that gets involved. So I'm just going to pop those up and out of the way, and we'll talk you through what you need to get stuck into this particular design. So the wires I'm using are a 0.8mm gauge heavy wire, and I'll put the American equivalent in the description beneath afterwards. And I'm also using the 0.4mm gauge wire to weave everything together. I'm using raw copper again today because I've just fallen in love with it as a material. It's absolutely fantastic, and the gemstone, as I've just explained, is a lovely, lovely snow quartz. Now I will also be using my bent chain nose pliers, my flush cutters, and also, if I can find them, here they are, my flat pliers. Now, in a future video, I'm going to talk to you about these cool little items, which are duck build pliers. So that's coming up in a future video. I've just literally got them this week. I'm going to learn how to use them properly, and then I'm going to share some hints and tips with you with regards to that. As an option, you may have seen certain wire weavers use a ring clamp. Now, this is traditionally used. You pop your ring in and it enables you to get a really good grip. This is it's got a, I've forgotten what it's called, one of those things. Wing nut. I'm a wing nut. It's got a wing nut on it to tighten it up, but some you will see that have a wooden wedge at the far end which just tips that closed. This can be really handy when you're learning wire weaving, just to keep those two parallel lines, and we will be using two parallel lines as part of this design today. So something like that, you can pick them up for about £8, probably less than $12 or $13 US. They're not difficult to come by, and the one with the wedge of wood in the far end is just as good. This just happens to be one that I have hanging around. So those are really handy to have, but what you really, really need are your flat pliers and some nice cutters to get going. So I'm going to grab hold of my 0.8mm gauge, and what you would need are two quite long lengths, about 14 inches or so for a gemstone of this size, and I think we'll probably work with this one, so maybe slightly larger, up to 16 or 17 inches or so, and you're going to need two of those in the 0.8mm gauge. And what we're looking to create is a series of prongs. So I have got one section here that I've already done, and hopefully the other section here. So you'd look to create two lengths with a similar number of prongs on them, and we're going to be weaving them together back to back. Now I do have dedicated videos, which again I will link at the end of this particular tutorial, which take you through all of the details of prong setting. So I'm just going to very, very quickly show you on a length of wire how to create that first prong. If you feel that you need further instruction, check out the video linked either at the end, or again I'll pop it in the description beneath this video so you can have a look if you're not familiar at all with prong setting. If you've been with me a little while, you probably have seen that before. So again, I say on a slightly larger gemstone, we're looking at around about 16 to 17 inches of wire to work with, and you need 2 of those lengths in the 0.8mm gauge, just giving that a little bit of warmth. And I'm going to leave a good sort of 3 or 4 inches on one end before I come in and I start making my first bend. Now I'm going to use my flat facing pliers to define the length of the prong, like so, and the distance between the prongs. So this will be my first prong. There we go, and continue along like so. Now, because I have covered this a number of times now, I don't want to spend too long, but basically what you're looking to do is achieve a series of prongs, same number, and it will depend on how big the gemstone or whatever it is you're looking to set is. If you have quite a chunky piece, then you'll want more prongs, or perhaps even slightly longer prongs if it's quite large, just to give you that sense of security. This is how we start off. And you can just take a little bit of time to get those to sit really neatly and give them a nice squeeze to make sure that that baseline is flat. So as I say, I'll just show you the ones that I created earlier ready for the demonstration, which is this pair of wires here. Now these I have hammered very, very gently, very, very light tap, and I will just show you exactly how I achieved that. This is with a 1/4 pound hammer with a brass face, steel block, rubber block underneath for sound deadening, and it's just a case of making sure that everything is exactly how I want it to be. I need a straight line along the baseline and those prongs to be evenly spaced and very similar in their sizes. Very, very gently all the way along where the prongs sit, nothing on the ends. We're just going to leave that natural. So I've done both of those just before I started recording, and what we need to do is to get everything set up ready. Now the piece that I'm choosing to set is actually not that deep. If I was looking to set a piece like this, which I prong set earlier on, I would want to set my wires that little bit further apart. Basically, so that the piece of gemstone or rough that we're working with sits between them. Because the piece that I've chosen to work with now is a little bit narrower, they can come closer together. So the distance between these two lines, prongs going in opposing directions, is set by the depth of your gemstone. So this is slightly wider, so I would probably take that a little bit further apart for that one. Now I'm going to be working with my 0.4mm gauge, my finer wire off the reel. And what I like to do is I'll show you now what we're looking to achieve. Sorry about the banging. We're looking to achieve a basket weave all the way along between the 2 opposing direction prongs. And then we're looking over the course of about 2 inches to taper the distance until the 2 wires become side by side. And I've left just a little bit of a tail of wire on here, just on the off chance that I want to do something more interesting with that later. So I'm just going to pop this back out of the way. When we're working with wire, I like to have just a little bit of extra wire just on the ends, both of the finer gauge and of the heavier gauge that I'm using for my framework, purely because it gives me more options. You'll always find uses for little tiny bits of wire. Now there was a thing hanging up here earlier, it's gone, I don't know where it is now, and it's just full of little coils, little offcuts of copper wire that have been turned into a coil and then hammered, and then all put onto a thicker gauge of wire as a torque necklace, and they look really pretty, and that's just with waste and offcuts. So it doesn't matter if you then have to trim that little bit of extra off later, you'll always find a use for it, but if you don't have it, you're going to kind of wish that you did. So we're going to come back down to the board now. And I've got my 0.4mm gauge, it's on the reel over on this side, so this is all connected. And what we would do, what I tend to do, is to decide how deep I want the distance between the 2 strands of wire to be. And then I pop one of those down, I start by winding very close to that last prong. Give that a scooch to make it nice and tight, and draw the wire underneath and over the top like so. So what I'm going to do now, because the wire that's connected over on this side is going to the reel, I'm just going to bring that up slightly and slide my second section of wire into position. So I've got a long stretch that's coming away to the reel of wire, going over the top from underneath here, over the top here. And on the other side, my wire that is cut has come over the top. I'm just going to hold those two really firmly close together, and I'm going to come diagonally like so. This is the distance apart that I'm looking to set, and I'm going to draw the wire around 3 times on either side. So I've got 3 times the wire has come down the centre, coming back down to the lower of my 2 wires, and I'm going to draw that slightly together and then wrap 3 times, 1 and 2 and 3. Make sure those are nice and tidy. We're looking for diagonal lines. Now you can see there's a slight kink in this, and if I very carefully just give that a little bit of a moderation, then that actually works really nicely. So we're looking for diagonals. The final wire has come over the top, so down the centre, underneath the upper of my 2 wires with the prongs on, and then 3 times around this side. So you can just open those out at the end ever so slightly. Another reason not to prematurely hammer these ends of the wire. So again, just a little zigzag, bringing those 2 wires closer and closer together on this segment until they meet together in the middle, and you can draw them so that they sit side by side. So I'll just show you again on the piece that I have prepared. You can see the zigzag, zig and zag back and forth until those 2 heavier gauges of wire sit neatly together, and you've got that little bit of extra wire just in case. So in the opposite direction, we're going to maintain distance between the 2 base lines all the way along until we get past the last prong and we start tapering. Ideally, these 2 distances need to be the same. I've said about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, as long as it's not incredibly elongated, unless of course you're wrapping a massive rock that's the size of your head, then you might need it slightly longer. So I'm just going to pop that back out of the way. If you imagine, if you will please, that we have zigzagged all the way along here and brought these 2 together, I'm just going to wrap that around. We'll flip over to the other side and I'll show you how to go along in the opposite direction. So we're looking for the wire, the final wire, to hit every other prong gap. So on one side, at the bottom here, we're quite close to the leftmost prong. So I'm going to come down the centre and around the outside. Sorry if that jiggled a little bit there. 1 and 2 and 3. And then pull that nice and firmly. Just open that out ever so slightly, bearing in mind that we've pre-hammered this, so we've got a little bit of residual strength here, but it's nice and soft at the ends. And then you're just going to go back and forth all the way along. Now we'll show you very quickly how you can apply the use of the ring clamp at this stage, but I'm just going to show you very quickly because you may prefer to do this by hand. So back down to the board, I'm going to make sure that my ring clamp is nice and open. And I'm going to put it over the segment. Now you'll see that it's got a soft faux suede in the mouth there, so that it won't damage any of my wires. I'm just going to tighten that up, making sure that the distance is set between those 2 base wires, like so, nice and firmly. Now what this will do is will just be like an extra hand for you to hold on to whilst you are weaving. What can happen is that as you pull this a little bit tighter, you accidentally draw them together anyway, which is one of the reasons I prefer, when I'm doing an open design like this, to work by hand. I will bring this back in a future video and show you how you can use that in other areas of wire weaving. So we're looking to zig and zag all the way until we get to the last 2 prongs, and then taper down over that 1.5 to 2 inch distance until you have something that looks a little bit like this. So let me tidy that out of the way. Almost dropped the hammer on my foot. That would not have been funny. Might have been funny for you, but not necessarily for me. So we have got our section. We hammered it before we started weaving. If you want to, you can very, very gently just make sure that all of these are sitting exactly at 90 degrees to their respective base wires. You should have got enough fluidity left in the wire to be able to achieve that. Now the next section is actually to turn these prongs up. Now all we're looking to do is to get each of these sections of prong bent wire to turn inside the woven section. What we're not trying to do is actually bend the prongs in any way. They are currently sitting out like this, and they're housed inside our basket weave, and we just want them to sit up like so. So we're actually just twisting the wire, the whole wire, through 90 degrees. We're not causing any new bends to occur on those two base wires. So it's actually quite easy. What we're going to do is just start it moving little by little, and you'll feel it kind of come together like so. So, I mean, you could play if you wanted to, if you have a childish mind like mine, but what you will end up with is a basket woven section at the base with prongs coming up. If you have a very chunky specimen rock, you might need to open those out slightly. And what I'm going to do is I might set this one in portrait or landscape. I don't know which looks best. Actually, I think this one in landscape mode. So I'm going to find out where the centre of my prong section is. Let me just put that on my hand so you can see the colour difference better. And I'm going to start drawing that around so that it sits neatly and holds, caresses the gemstone in position. And very, very quickly you have a secure housing. Just going to draw one of these ends round the back, just very, very gently until that comes up to the centre. And then the other side, I'm going to draw that over the front. Now, if I had only done an inch of tapering, I would then have 4 bare wires, which I could weave together at the top. So I've actually done quite a lot of weaving, quite a lot more than I anticipated. If I just flip this over, you'll see already that this is really secure. So one of the things that you can do now is you can either push those tapered wires so that they sit down further on here, or my answer to this would be just to draw this all the way around the upright, like so. I'm just going to continue to do that. I'm going to leave those 2 wires out to one side for the moment. I'm going to just push these back into position. One of the reasons we don't hammer on the open sections of those baselines is because it means I can be more, it's more malleable at this stage. So I've changed my mind about what I want to do during the generation of this piece. So that just gives me more choices. So I can then just very, very easily twist the other segment through 90 degrees. And if I wanted to, I could continue to weave in the basket fashion. So backwards and forwards, 3 on either side, until I'd filled enough of this to create myself a fancy bail. So I'm just going to do a couple of turns, because I think you have all seen how to do basket weave a number of times now. So you could continue all the way up if you liked. I'm just going to wrap that around really quickly, and then you can make yourself a simplistic bail. Not entirely sure what I've done with my bail maker, so I'm just going to use the handle of my pliers to draw that end around, wrap it back on itself, and you've got yourself a really instant pendant, which is ever so secure. You've got all of this stuff that you can either hide away neatly, you can pop a little coil on the front, you can have a lot of fun at just making kind of bubbly shapes if you want to. So I'll just make a quick coil, an oversized coil to sit down over the face of this particular piece. Sorry if that went out of focus slightly, it came up too close to the camera. So I'm just going to turn one of these into a coil and draw it down over the face of my Snow Quartz until that sits in a way that pleases me. I think that looks quite pretty. You could make all kinds of fancy stuff over here. You've even got a little bit of wire left. You could do a bit of fancy wire weaving. You could have those coming off in any different direction. It is a really, really easy to learn. Once you sit down and you get the tension whilst you're doing that back and forth, once you get that tension right, then Bob's your uncle. That's a British saying, sorry if that doesn't translate well. It means that basically it's quite easy. Just get the technique down and then you can wrap virtually anything. Quite chunky stones. This is one that we looked at last week, which is the prong setting for weirdly shaped objects. Sometimes that won't be enough. If you've got a particularly heavy stone, you might want a bit more to it. So that's when you can do your combination basket prong setting technique. Well, I hope that you found it useful. I hope to see you joining me on one of my Monday lives very, very soon. Any requests or comments, please do pop them below the video. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not already done so. Lovely of you to have me in your home. Thank you so much, and I will be back with you again very, very soon for more easy beginners wirework tutorial videos. I'm Gem Hawk. See you soon.